Fears that the Shongweni Dam west of Pinetown might show signs of strain if rain continues there. If the dam were to collapse, it would have a devastating effect on communities in low-lying areas towards the coast. So how do cities then prevent such possibilities and prepare for natural disasters? Professor Hope Makadimi-Shachipungu is Associate Professor at the KZN School of Built Environment and Development Studies, and she joins us now to answer some of these questions. Prof, thank you so much for joining us right here on the show. And that's the question. I mean, how do we better prepare for natural disasters, I suppose, from a city and town planning perspective?
Thank you very much, and good morning to all your viewers. I think cities get to prepare for disasters, not when it's during the disasters. So as town planners, we are actually trained to actually prepare ourselves before the disaster. So there are processes that we go through it. And before we decide on any land use or any development, we're talking about doing what we call site analysis. And it is through that site analysis where we're able to decode if there will be any chances of development or any problems in the future. And in so doing, through the site analysis, we are looking at a number of stages. One of the stages that we'll look at is the slope analysis, looking at the gradient and the topography of the area before you can even start developing. We also go on and do our environmental assessment, our impact assessment, and just to see how is the environment, what is the climate like, what is the weather in the future, and how is the soil going forward. We also look at the land use management and land use budget to look at the areas which are developable or non-developable. And on those areas, that's when we decide whether this area we can develop it or not, based on the flooding or not. And where we find that there's flooding, then we can leave those areas undeveloped for whatever reason, and try to come up with an innovative way to use that particular space. And that's how we prepare, and not during the disaster. We prepare before the disaster, right, because we are trained to do that. So
in situations like this where we see the flood in KZN, I mean, how do such floods affect towns?
Yeah, obviously, they affect towns in a number of ways. Obviously, you're talking about life of the people who are residing in that particular environment. They will be affected. But also, it also affects the economy, the way in which economy functions, because we are part of a human race. We are all connected. So once you have one road not functioning, obviously, some activities within the CPDs, which are supposed to be run by the people who are not within the CPDs, they won't be able to function that. And we are seeing that in KZN now. There are a number of shops which were not able to open just because they were not able to come to work. We are also seeing this, it's got a long-term impact in terms of sustainability of the economy and even the recovery. The cost of recovery becomes expensive if we don't prepare on time, because now we have to deal with the damage control.
Yeah, I'm keen to know, Prof, is it possible for, building towns to actually make floods worse? In this instance, how does then the building on a floodplain increase the risk of floods?
Yeah, it's very possible to build the cities in a way that you actually increase flooding if you are not observing town planning standards. For argument's sake, as you look at Durban, the topography of Durban is mountainous, and by very nature of that being mountainous, it means that when we are designing, we need to be mindful of that in terms of our drainage system. So the areas at the catchment areas, they need to be designed in a solid way, in a way that they are able to attract or able to catch its own water, because that failure to do that, that's when you find that the catchment area, if they cannot catch their own water, that water flows to low-lying areas and we have a disaster. So we have to make sure that we invest a lot into the catchment area, because our area is steepy, our area is hilly. So when you go to catchment areas, also the catchment areas should be prepared in case of the catchment area failing to catch the water. So we have to put infrastructure, the drainage system, which are sound and strong and ready to carry heavy pressure, including the ones from the catchment areas. So if we don't do that, and we will have a serious problem going forward.
Well, I appreciate you speaking to us about this, Prof, definitely giving us some insight on, I suppose, what work lies ahead, as well as, for further town planning and just relief efforts within KwaZulu-Natal, where perhaps can, of course, the experts look into ensuring that we manage this better. 306 lives lost, more people still missing, young children drowning, I suppose, due to, to an extent, how, of course, the town planning had been managed before. But Professor Hope Makadimi Misha Chipungu from UKZN. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.